Good morning, beautiful people of the Center for Spiritual Living. Let me begin this morning by thanking you for taking such good care of our center while I've been away for these past 6 weeks. You know, in some places when there's a large community and there's a senior pastor, when the senior pastor goes away, so do the people, and with them the money. Well, you know, let's be frank, but we don't have that problem here. We don't have that problem because we've been about the business of growing a mature community with a collaborative practice. And our guest speaker from last week, Reverend Joel Fotinus, he talked about that when I took him to lunch afterwards. He said, wherever I went in the center and spoke to people in the workshop, those helping me, the volunteers, he said, I just met leaders, people who have a stake in creating the center. It's about the work that we come to do together, and so we're all invested in creating our center. So I can go away and feel confident that our center is in good care. And guess what? We've been sowing this seed of prosperity for a long time, and other centers in the country are noticing it. Pastors writing to me say, how is it possible that you can go away? And now we're starting to see other centers sending their ministers off on sabbatical. So can you see how those seeds that we have been sowing are starting to yield something even beyond our borders for other people? And I'm very, very glad of that, and it is relevant to our topic this morning, which is sowing seeds of abundance and planning your success. So that topic comes from the book that we're reading together, A New Design for Living, by Ernest Holmes and Willis Kinnear. And so I read the chapter assigned to today. In the first edition, it's on page 130. In the more recent edition, it's at page 144. Either way, I brought the quote along with us that I'd like to start with. So I can have the first slide, and let's read this together. In our desire to start to succeed in a different way than we have in the past, we create a new balance in our pattern of thinking, establish a balance that is more favorable toward good. All right, I've been thinking about that. And today, more than ever, I am sensitive to the balance of thought and the way it is tipping in our culture as our country approaches election time. I notice that more and more people are having difficulty discussing important issues. So I went onto Facebook to a well-known public figure, and right there on her timeline, she had this very simple question that goes like this. So, ... I'm curious, ... who do you think will win the election? Now, instead of answering the question, the many thousands of people who commented, well, let's just say the comment section ruptured into a battleground of harsh words in which those people participating, each one was accusing the other one's candidate of being the bigger liar. So my expectation in going to the page was to learn something. I thought this will be interesting as people say their piece. You know, think about this, what about this? But no, I didn't learn anything because what was going on was on the level of a high school name-calling contest. And so, of course, I just lost interest in being in that mess. So I've been thinking about this opening statement and reworking it a bit like this. In our desire to start to succeed in a different way than we have in the past, well, we might want to consider creating a new balance in our patterns of thinking so that we can start tipping the balance in favor of the way we want to create this world. Now, I'm talking about myself, right? Because I have to ask the question, in what direction do the patterns of my thinking tip the balance? That's my job. Last week on Wednesday, I had the privilege to be invited by the president of our movement, President John Waterhouse. He has weekly president's calls in which he invites guest speakers to talk about important issues in our denomination. So he invited me to talk about mindfulness in communication, especially as relates to the various discussion boards in our own movement, in our denomination, because apparently we have the same problem. So when important topics come up on our discussion board, sometimes those comment sections are characterized by an atmosphere of contention and battle. So people lose interest and they withdraw, and so we can't discuss the important issues, especially when the discussions are fueled by emotions that are driving the comments. And people lose interest and withdraw. And the image I suggested to those listening to the call was to imagine an alien being passing by our neck of the woods and peeked in at our discussion boards. What would they conclude about our values and how we are with each other and what's important to each other if they looked in at how we talk to each other? If they look at the direction that the balance of our thinking, communicating, is tipping, well, it's a good question. What is the direction that the balance of my thinking is tipping? As a culture, where is it tipping? And as an individual, where is it going? Because that's the important part, because you and me, we contribute to the culture. That's the good news. And it's the way of our teaching. And it is for us to have faith in that we can tip it. And to keep on tipping it, tip that balance in the direction of good. That's why I love the song that Chris sang for us, Faith Rivera's song. I'm called to be a healer for all humanity, for all humanity. I'm called to be a dreamer, to believe in what could be. I'm called to be a maker, like St. Francis says, an instrument of peace. I'm called to be a giver of the abundance I have to express generosity. And then that one line, I'm called to be a prayer, living out the truth that I seek. There it is. That's our way. To live out what we seek to express, to be the example, to be the peace that I want to see in the world, to love in exactly the way that I think is the best contribution to a world that works for everyone, and to stay with that idea, to stick with it, and to keep on keeping on with it, no matter how loudly roars the chaos of contention around us, and to believe that our work is a very, very real way of making a difference in the world. We do and can tip the direction of the scales in good way with the meditations of our hearts and with the words of our mouths. So our practice then is to match my actions to my calling as best as I can. And if it's out of balance, okay. If it's balanced in the wrong direction, okay, then let me start again every morning fresh and establish a new pattern in my thinking. That's my work. And I love how realistic the authors are. More favorable, modest, moderate, not, it's now or never, it's all or nothing. Because then, if I can't be perfect, at least I can go for an improvement in the balance. Because we're all working on it. There's a song we sometimes sing, and we're going to sing it today to close the service. It's called the Peace Song. How does the opening line go? Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me, not the other person. And there's a beautiful line in there that says, and let us walk with each other, how? In perfect harmony. Well, how does a person do that? Well, personally, I have to take it one forgiving step at a time. One as conscious as possible conversation at a time. And then at the end of the day to examine, see, are any appropriate adjustments required? Let peace begin with me. So at the end of the day, in my quiet time, I look, how well have I done with that? Let me walk with each person in perfect harmony. Well, how well did I do today? Because maybe if you're like me, you haven't mastered it all yet. Didn't get it all right in one day, but nevertheless we show up like here to encourage each other to keep on going, because we have some faith in that. Keep on shifting the balance so it keeps on tipping in the direction that is harmonious with our heart's desire. Here's a spiritual pattern to set in motion. Start again every single day in the intended direction of your heart's desire, no matter where the previous journey took you to of the day before. Get up in the morning, start the pattern anew. Check again. Start anew. Check again. Start anew. One of the ways that I work on creating a new balance is to check my communication, especially written communication, email communication. Be mindful. And to me, that means strip away all of the mischief. Do you know what mischief is, right? It's a message that has another message underneath it, right? It's a message that has in it a politely intended harm. It's a message that has hurt wrapped in it, and you don't care, but you've covered it. So when I write a message sometimes and I suspect mischief, I send it to Reverend Carol Chase here at our center, because she's Sonoma County's only nonviolent communication certified facilitator. And I say to her, check for mischief. And sometimes, she goes through the whole email and she sends me the only surviving sentence. And do you know that the world is a better place in that moment that that's the only thing that I say? That's how I'm learning. One of the ways to walk in harmony, it means communicate harmoniously. And it doesn't mean I have to agree with everything, no. But it does mean that I can learn to express my disagreement without resorting to anger and harsh expressions. That's my job. I've got to learn that. It's also an important part of our teaching, because it says right in our teaching, what comes out of us in our communication started earlier on in us as a thought. And that is the place where apparently we have some choice, some dominion, some freedom, some ability to select and decide. So we can say we're about learning to take responsibility for our thought, and you can monitor our progress as it shows up in our words and communication. Anybody watching me, you can tell yourself, ought to be able to tell. Yeah, keep on thinking of that phrase I shared last week from the Upanishads, because I'm preparing for the Upanishads for beginner class that's coming up. And that phrase keeps on ringing in my head. Watch your thoughts, because they become your words. Watch your words, because they become your deeds. Watch your deeds, because it becomes your character. And watch your character, because that becomes your destiny. During my time off, I managed to catch up with a lot of reading, and I also refamiliarized myself with some classics from our movement, and I read that speech that our founder, Ernest Holmes, made at the Asilomar Conference Ground, and this one line just stuck with me. He said, "Show me someone who is for something and against nothing." And I had to sit with that. What does that mean? Well, it does not mean that we are to have no opinions. No. or that we should not or cannot talk about difficult situations and topics. No. However, it could mean that I start to tip the balance of my thinking so that when I speak, I'm speaking more in favor of what I'm for. And then when I address difficult topics or opposing ideas, I do so without spite and meanness, no matter what the preferred temperature of the other person's method is. I'm responsible for me. She's responsible for her, and him for him, he for him. I was discussing this with a person, and she had some concern about it. She said, I don't know about that because I'll become ineffectual. I mean, shouldn't I match my words? Shouldn't they match with the intensity and anger of the conversation? I mean, won't my conversations become all limp and my ideas be all wimpy if I follow your advice? No. We can still have passionate, engaged, interesting conversations without abandoning our vision of a world that works for everyone. Absolutely. I learned that in a book I read by Susan Scott. It's called How to Have Fierce Conversations. And I wrote down some of the points from her book, and I brought a few of them along to share with you. The next slide will show them to you. And the first one is, master the courage to interrogate reality, your reality, right? Or as our founder would say it, we are to analyze, dissect, and investigate until we know the truth. In other words, let me see if these things that I am stuck on, that I insist on, that I believe in are actually true. Because, truth is very complex and nobody owns it. And everybody's version of it is different. And then let me also investigate, are these feelings that I'm feeling, do they come from fact or from fiction? Oh, one of our greatest abilities that we have, natural bred, born into us, is the ability to investigate what I think in terms of is it true or not, if we would only use it. That's why I love that J.J. Weston, and she's a certified the work facilitator from Byron Katie's school. She teaches seminars and classes of it where you can learn how to investigate your thinking. The second one, love this one. Take responsibility for your emotional wake. So the author tells a story about a friend of hers who has many arguments with her husband, and then when she comes and tells the story of the arguments, she can never remember the words that her husband said, but she can always remember how she felt. Because that's the nature of it. It stays with us deeply. I can't control how you will interpret what I say, or how you will feel about what I say, but I can take responsibility for my delivery and the thought in me stripped from mischief that gives that delivery. And I can match, to the best of my ability, match my delivery to my spiritual calling. Let peace begin with me. Let me be an instrument. I'm working on that. The third one, let silence do the heavy lifting. Sometimes for me, it's better to say nothing until I know I can say it beautifully without mischief. American culture sometimes has discomfort with silence because it means something's wrong. If the place isn't filled up with noise and conversation and opinions, but actually it appears that we really can benefit from silence. And maybe I can say we need it, especially when we're trying to integrate everything that is happening. Let the dust settle. Oh, there is a silence within you that you can access in quietness, and it has in it more solid advice and more wisdom than any amount of noise than you can create with words and opinions and utterances. You can trust it. I find that since I began practicing sitting in meditation, sitting in silence, I have become more and more comfortable with not having to contribute my opinion and not responding until I have found my true, authentic voice. Sit in the silence and let the silence instruct my speaking. And sometimes the message of the instruction from the silence is stay still, Edward. It's like I'm talking to you. The next slide from A New Design for Living Together. By establishing in our minds ideas declaring that a greater good now exists in all aspects of our living, we begin to build up a new pattern of thought. So that's the job, starting every morning with that new pattern. And by the way, sometimes the task is to become aware of what patterns are currently in place. And it's difficult to do that when your mind isn't given the opportunity to slow down. That's why I love that we have all of these meditation opportunities at the center. You can read about them on the bulletin. If you don't know how to meditate, you can take that class with Reverend Ruth Barnard on how to meditate. She's a great guide. Learn how to slow down into the quietness, so that mind has the opportunity to touch in that silence. Because generally, without that, mind is moving so fast that it's difficult to make sense of everything. I was having a conversation with a young lady about this exactly, and she is about to break up with her boyfriend, and she's having a very difficult time of it, as is the way of things. And she said to me, my mind is racing, it's rushing, and I'm so confused and so lost, and I can't land on any thought. What should I do? And I said to her, right now, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Or stated in another way, sit still and trust that stillness. It's like her mind, I said to her, it's like when I pour fresh water into my fish pond. All the muck at the bottom comes to the surface. You can't see anything. You can't move plants around. You can't count the fish. It's appropriate to wait for things to settle and to trust that and to follow not the voice of urgency. Practice sitting still and trust you're sitting still. Practice sitting still so that you can trust the stillness in you, so that it can reveal to you what your prayer ought to be. Because, my friends, it is a good time for us to pray for our country. And we owe it to ourselves and to our country to do that from the most peaceful place we can get to, and to let that peace instruct us on how to pray. There is a silence in you that you can access in quietness, that has in it more solid advice and wisdom than any kind of words and noise and utterances that you can create with your mouth and opinion. The next slide, together with me. We build up idea by idea, thought by thought, concept by concept, the good we desire. As we do this, the negative content of our conscious mind and subconscious mind will be replaced. Then we will have a new pattern, a new design for living. Oh, those negative thought tendencies. Well, they're habits, aren't they? Habits that we are learning to treat gently and to interrupt them so that we can redirect them and thereby establish new patterns and tip the balance in a new direction. And there's a great story in the New Design for Living just about that, about a man who has a business, and every morning he starts, like we've been talking, to set a new direction, and he does his prayer work, and he gets clear on this concept of having a prosperous business, and he's so convinced and he's so excited, and he goes off to work, but no sooner does he get there that he notices that his thought starts to be attached to all of those people outside who are walking past the door and not coming in. So there's the quote, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. And his thoughts were affecting his words and actions because even those people that did come into the store, he was speaking to and treating in a kind of absent-minded, distant way. And so he was focused. His thoughts were on the people who weren't coming in and thereby tipping the scale in a direction that he did not want to go in. Next week, we're going to be dealing with that. We're going to be talking about the next chapter and looking at the idea of consistency in practice. And we're going to look at examples of people who have had to keep on going through tough times, through rejection, through repeated failure and disappointment, so that we can learn from that to support ourselves and each other in keep on keeping on. I want to close with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. One day, we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant good, but a means by which we arrive at that good. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. I'm working on that. Let us pray. As we let our thoughts move inward to that place where stillness is already present, we acknowledge the Creator, that one creative force that is responsible for everything that is, that shows itself in everything that is visible and is also the idea and potential of everything that has not yet come into being. It is the energy of creation, and it is the love of this world that unites all of us. Our hearts beat its love. Our thoughts reveal its creativity. And today, from that place of unity and creativity, I speak this word of prayer for all of us, declaring that I am learning to succeed in the right things, and that the source of my success is spirit within. And so with this prayer, I relax into what is mine to do, and I do that in the most beautiful way that I know how, without effort and without stress. In deepest gratitude for this, I release this word of prayer to the law of mind that reveals to us exactly the form of what we have prayed. And together we say, and so it is. And I invite you to breathe in deeply and sigh. And with that sigh, we make the transition to the part of our service where we share. I invite the ushers to stand. And will you take your gift in your hand? Perhaps you give in the automatic way through your bank account, or perhaps you give once a month, or perhaps you give cash in an envelope. Whatever way you participate, either hold the gift in your hand or place your hand on your chest as a symbol of your contribution to this center. And say after me, I bless this gift. I send it forth to heal and prosper. It does amazing work in the world. And so it is. Ushers, please receive the gift. See you.